Hi everybody, this is Nathan Nichols, Marketing Manager for MetaScale. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We will be talking about network data, and specifically using Hadoop to turn network data into business intelligence. With me I have Sada Krishnamurthy, who is our lead Big Data Solution Architect here at MetaScale. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick overview of MetaScale. To those of you who may be new to our company, we are a wholly owned subsidiary of Sears Holdings Corporation, and we're born out of that Fortune 100 enterprise experience. About 4 years ago, we started implementing Hadoop into the enterprise and our traditional data warehouses here. And from that learning, we developed MetaScale to offer that expertise to other companies. One of the solutions that we've developed for a company is network data. And with that, I will pass this over to Sada to go into a little more depth.
Thank you, Nathan. So, what are the challenges of achieving the big data ROI? Recently there was a survey done September of 2013 where enterprise practitioners believed that potential value of big data is significant. But then about 46% of them said they only realized partial value from the big data deployments. And 2 of them said there was no value at all achieved. So this is a big number. The enterprise practitioners are believing that there is a big potential for big data, but about 48%, about half of it, are either not seeing any value at all or limited values. So there has to be reasons for this. According to Wikibon, the main reasons were that the first was lack of skilled big data practitioners. This is a challenge that the technology industry goes through. As and when technology evolves, when a new technology comes, initially there is a phase where there is a lack of skills for this technology, and this big data space is no exception. So that's one of the main compelling reasons that the people are finding it hard to get value out of the big data. And of course, the technology is relatively immature right now. It's evolving. The big data space started about in 2003, 2004 when Google wrote the first MapReduce framework paperwork. Since then, it has been evolving slowly and steadily. There's a lot of work getting done, but the technology is still immature. It is growing. It's growing fast. But then, there are new and new ecosystem tools coming to the picture, but it is still immature. But the key reason that the survey reported was the lack of compelling business use case. That's one of the key reasons. Not every technology is a solution for everything. So if you want to do a big data technology using Hadoop, things like that, there are specific use cases where it is good for, but it's not one size fit all. So compared to the previous slide where 48% saw limited value, one of the main reasons is that probably those people who are trying to use big data, they are the wrong use cases that they were trying to POC. That was one of the main reasons for it. Now, where does MetaScale come into the picture? MetaScale is very familiar with the challenges created by big data and the difficulty to achieve maximum business value from big data efforts. What we have done is that we have spent a lot of time in the Hadoop ecosystems, and MetaScale has developed solutions to these challenging problems. We have experienced internal Hadoop skills. We have people who are really trained in Hadoop. We have people who we trained when they are a different background and they were trained in Hadoop. So we have a lot of expertise inside our company that can be leveraged by other corporations. We have a lot of expertise in putting Hadoop workloads into production. We got multiple customers that we are supporting. We got customers who have 10-node production clusters all the way to 1,000-node production clusters. Different customers have different requirements, different data sizes. So we evaluate the customer needs and we put stuff to production and recommend the clustering size based on the requirements. And the key thing what we do is that we have experience in identifying the Hadoop business use cases. That's the key aspect of it. As we mentioned before also that, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Not every problem Hadoop is a solution for it. So it has to have a real use case. It has to have a big data framework around it for Hadoop to be functioning well. So MetaScale has expertise in all of these areas. So where does Hadoop come in the big data space? The Hadoop ecosystem gives business the ability to create value from its data, being able to process and store vast amounts of data from different disparate sources. The term big data is growing big data may mean different things to different people. The recent survey showed that over 80% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. Because of the evolving internet space, there is tons of data in the internet space. There are tons of data companies are consuming. There's Twitter messages coming across. The YouTube videos are there, Facebook messages, things like that. So what do we do to take business decision out of those data which are both structured and unstructured? So this is where Hadoop comes to the picture. Hadoop enables analytics, deep analytics, and real-time analytics to make business decision agile. So you want to do predictive analytics, you want to do prescriptive analytics based on the raw data that is getting consumed by your system. The data may be both structured or unstructured, and you want to really take analytics out of it. And the ecosystem that Hadoop provides really helps doing the deep analytics and predictive and prescriptive analytics, things like that. MetaScale actually recommends using Hadoop to create an enterprise data hub or data lake where you have a single point of truth. We have built enterprise data hub for multiple customers. It's interesting that recently Cloudera talked about an enterprise data hub product that Doug Kuntig was talking about. So MetaScale actually started this journey earlier, and we saw the value of creating an enterprise data hub. So traditionally, people have data hubs like Teradata, or they use Oracle, things like that as enterprise data warehouses. We recommend to use Hadoop as your enterprise data hub, so that's where the single point of truth is there. So how does we achieve big data success? Any project can be successful only if the IT and business work together. In a traditional project world, what happens is that in a traditional technology, there is always a disconnect between an IT and business. So a lot of time that the business users are coming with requirements, but the IT solution may not be solving the problem. But the way a Hadoop ecosystem has been developed is that the ecosystem not only has technical tools, there are business analytics tools around that ecosystem that makes it easier for the businesses to look at the data that Hadoop provides, and IT and business can work together very well in this environment. And then we need to understand how Hadoop will fit into your environment. That's the key. Hadoop is not one size fit all environment, so it has to fit in your environment. And the question basically corporation needs to ask is that, what are you really trying to accomplish? Okay, what is your data size? What is big data for you? What kind of customer data you have? What kind of data that you're consuming from other sources? What are you really trying to accomplish? And the key is that the ecosystem provides tools that we can have a faster POC developed, so you can start your journey with a small data set, do a POC out of it, see the end results before we really decide on whether this is the way we want to go. And of course, like any project, you need to have a clear, defined success criteria. And without that, it may not mean anything. And of course, we have to discover the real big data use cases that we want to develop.
All right, before we move on, I just want to let everybody know that we will be doing a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So if you do have questions as we go along, please send those to us via the chat function, and we'll get to as many as we can when we're done.
Okay, now let's get to the depth of this use case, network analytics with Hadoop. We all know that in a large corporation, there are the Wi-Fi access points, network controllers, firewall controllers. There are network management systems, monitoring the mobile devices. We have all seen this. If you're a large enterprise, you will have all of these devices somewhere in your corporation. wouldn't it be cool if I can consume all this data and figure out what is transferred across this network, what is really happening in the network, who is doing what network devices are working, what network devices are not working. To capture all this information, it will be really cool to do a deep analytics on it. So the ability to perform analytics and continuous reporting in-house is definitely a big cost saver. So if you are a large enterprise, we have thousands of network devices. If you really want to save cost, one of the major costs in the corporation is network devices, right? There are people working there, they're monitoring the devices, there is a downtime there. It would really be a cost saver if we can take the analytics out to a tool like Hadoop, where we can do a real analytics and keep the intelligence in that framework, and that can really enable to save cost. Now imagine this situation. So if you are in a hotel or a restaurant, if you go to a Starbucks or you go to a Barnes & Noble, there are all free Wi-Fi network devices that the companies provide. Guess what? If you go and access those free Wi-Fi networks and press the accept terms and conditions paper that they give, basically now they're capturing your traffic. They know these companies know exactly what you're doing, where you're going, how much time you're spending in a website. So wouldn't it be cool? You capture all. The previous slide talked about the network behavior. Here we are talking about the customer behavior. So if you're in a hotel or a restaurant, retail shopping malls, wouldn't it be cool? Capture the behavior of the customers, what they are doing, and figure out a way to do some kind of targeted marketing for them that can result in increased sales. I mean, these analytics can be done for any supply chain corporation, any manufacturing, retail, logistics, things like that. And these can be enabled only if you have something like a Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi network device provided for them. So we had a situation where we had a large retail client. They were generating massive amounts of data in the network devices. They had devices and the data was coming and it was getting captured by a third-party managed service provider who was a telecom company. They were capturing this data on a daily basis from all the network devices across the corporation, across the stores, and also the sources were both the Wi-Fi network where the customers were going and using the free Wi-Fi, and all the associate devices in the stores where the internal network employees were using their mobile devices serving their customers. So the massive amounts of data was getting generated, and the requirement was that, okay, what am I going to do with this data? This retail client had a big challenge. Now I'm getting all this data set. How do I get intelligence out of it? How do I get insights out of it that I monitor my store network devices to see whether they are stable, up and running all the time. And I also want to monitor that, okay, when the customers are going to my store, what are they really doing? Are they really going and looking at the product from our competitor's website? Are they surfing around in other websites because the devices or the guest Wi-Fi network is free? Things like that. So on a daily basis, the managed service provider was collecting all the data and sent to an RDBMS team to do something about it. The challenge was that the RDBMS team got this massive data set on a daily basis, and they couldn't figure out what to do about it. The main part, the challenge was that, okay, now traditionally the RDBMS is great at structured data. Once you have unstructured data coming, you have E2 images coming, you got Facebook text messages coming, things like that. How do we process it? So this massive amounts of data that the managed service provider was sending to the RDBMS team, they gave them this data, but this team could not figure it out to make head and tail out of it. The primary reason was that it was a schemaless architecture, schemaless data. Unlike a traditional database where you predefine the schema, this is primarily schema on read data because the data is unstructured. And they could not figure out a single point of truth of collecting data from multiple devices. There was no in-house platform to provide continuous real-time analytics. So here we have for this big retail client, massive amounts of data, good insights can be captured out of it, but then the RDBMS team could not make anything out of it. So then the question became, they approached MetaScale and said, what do you want to help us do something with this data? And we thought that, what if we could use this data to gain customer insight, and why not use Hadoop? That's a perfect big data platform. That's where we entered. That's where Hadoop came into the picture. So the main difference is that between Hadoop and traditional RDBMS data could not effectively scale to handle large data sets. And here we are talking in terabytes of data. RDBMS has a limitation. You cannot horizontally scale the way you want it. There is a downtime involved in it. So if you have a 5-node database cluster, if you want to horizontally scale, there is a downtime involved in adding more nodes. But Hadoop is completely scalable. There is no downtime. You can keep on adding your node whenever you want. Structured database environment could not support the logic to process and transform data because the data in this case was completely both structured and unstructured. There was no schema around the data. So when we evaluated the data, we thought, why not use Hadoop as an enterprise data hub? Create a single point of truth for the data at lowest granularity. So this is basically taking each data point, storing in a Hadoop environment, running some processing logic, running some aggregated logic out of the data set, and get some insights. So using any business analytics tool, we can get insights out of it. Hadoop is definitely very cost effective because we all know that it runs in a commodity hardware. So for this customer, we built a massive node clusters, and these nodes were running a standard Dell. Each node was about $2,000, not more than that. And MetaScale has already established Hadoop as an enterprise data hub for this client. So this network analytics project became a real good use case to be deployed in the same Hadoop environment. So the client was receiving about 5 to 10 gigs data per day. And what we did is that for a year, the data was collected by the managed service provider and sent to the RDBMS team, and nothing was done. So, but on a daily basis, we were getting 5 gigs a day. So we created a process. We stored the data in Hadoop. We did a one-time historical data load to Hadoop. The years of data was loaded on a daily basis to Hadoop so that we get the historical data. And then on a daily basis, the data will get ingested to HDFS. And then we wrote MapReduce code to process the raw files. The raw file, there are multiple files coming in per day. Each file had its own format. So we recommended standardizing the format, and then we wrote MapReduce code using Ruby to process the raw files, put some kind of structure around it, put some kind of standardization around it, and then Pig was used to do aggregated logic, extracting the real BI information out of this data, getting the data out in a Hadoop layer so that some BI tool can be used to get insights out of it. This is the network architecture. So in the left side, those are all the managed service provider was collecting. They got Motorola devices, Fortinet data collectors. There are the SNPP performance management system. These devices are the ones which are actually collecting all the network traffic from across all the stores, across the corporation, both from the internal client's network devices and the client's Wi-Fi devices. All this data was captured, and then we put Hadoop cluster there, MetaScale cluster, and the data was ingested on a daily basis to Hadoop. The 5 to 10 gigs of files that was coming every day, ingested on a daily basis. Then Pig code was doing aggregated logic, and then DataMeer was used as a BI tool. The reason DataMeer was used was this particular client had enterprise DataMeer license. so they wanted to reuse that, and DataMeer is a good product over HDFS. So DataMeer was used to generate reports and real-time dashboards out of the data, which the business users were consuming. So from the technology roadmap, so we defined the Hadoop cluster allocation strategy. We had the data sourcing strategy. Because the data was both structured and unstructured, different files were coming at on the same day. We wanted to define a clear sourcing strategy so that the framework that was developed can be reused for other client needs. We got the data from both the Wi-Fi data point from different sources on a daily basis to HDFS. And of course, the massive power of MapReduce was used to get insights out of it, and Pig was used very heavily for this client. Now, from the reporting perspective, once the data was ingested to Hadoop, Pig was used to generate the data for reporting. From DataMeer, Hive was used to connect to HDFS, and reports were generated in DataMeer, the daily reports. So there are multiple reports generated, both from the customer behavior and the network behavior. So there was a daily report on the daily network behavior, which monitored the traffic for how the network devices are doing, and a daily customer report was generated that basically captured the customer behaviors for a day. Then the reports were aggregated as a weekly report and a monthly report. So, and our users, these were all generated by our end users. That's the beauty of it. This is where we talked about the business and the IT coming together. So from the IT perspective, the data was generated and put to Hadoop. IT people did their job, and the business users used DataMeer. They connected with Hive to connect to HDFS, and they were creating the reports. In DataMeer, the reports were like an Excel spreadsheet. So on a daily basis, based on the data coming in, these reports were generated on a schedule. So every morning when the business users will come, they will see the reports available, and they were doing analytics on it. So there were consolidated web-based dashboards for both for network metrics and also for customer behavior. Now the BI aspect of it. So now we have the data in HDFS. We have the report generated in DataMeer. Now what do you want to do with that? This is where the analytics piece comes to it. So there were infographics generated from DataMeer. The infographics is a graphical view of exactly your data point. So the infographics told exactly, okay, for this network, what network devices were down, for how long it was down, which store was getting affected, who is responsible to make sure that the network devices are up and running, things like that. And then from the customer behavior, we're getting information on, okay, here's the user, end customer going to the store. The customer is surfing the web, and the information captured was what website the customer was going to, how much time the customer is spending on a website. Are these websites the customer going to our competitors, this client's competitor's website? Things like that. So this is where the BI aspects came in. So DataMeer was using infographics was generated where the daily behaviors were captured in a graphical manner. And our business users used this data. And basically what they did is that they actually used this customer behavior and started working with some other group called targeted marketing, where they can try to do a target marketing for a specific customer based on customer behavior. So now they have the data on exactly where the customer is going, what they are trying to do. Why not do some kind of targeted marketing to those potential customers so that if they are going to a competitor website, we can match the competitor's price point, or we can give them the products that they need, things like that. So this is where the real intelligence came out of it, and a BI tool could be any BI tool. I mean, in this particular case, DataMeer was used, but it could be Tableau, MicroStrategy, Pentaho, anything the customer wants to use. So in the implementation level, over 10 billion records were processed per week with multiple feeds coming in. No ETL. This is the beauty of it. In a traditional ETL world, we always have an extract, transport, transfer, and load. In the Hadoop world, you extract the data, you load the data once, and you can transform as many times as possible. So that was the beauty of this, that there was no ETL involved in it. The business really realized, ultimately, the whole thing was the retail client wanted to know what I'm doing with this, how can I get value out of it. The business realized immediate value once this was in production. They could see the customer visit where they're going. What they found interesting was that customers were going and visiting Facebook, YouTube, Pandora, things like that. Of course, with the high bandwidth data, and then if you have a free Wi-Fi, a lot of customers, when they get a free Wi-Fi, this is what they're going to do. They are going to go to these sites and do some of their own fun stuff. But then there are customers who are actually doing a price comparison from the competitor's website. That's where this retail client wanted to know, not the 80% of the time people are spending in Facebook, YouTube, the other 20% of the time where they are really going to the competitor's website and trying to do a price match, things like that. And this is what we wanted to convey, that our business users were able to get inside that, okay, now we know exactly what the 20% customers are doing, where they are going, why they are going, and how can we increase our ROI by doing a targeted marketing for them. So this is some of the statistics for VLAN. So in this example, this was the top 25 user sites that the customer visits. The numbers below are S1004, 1905. These are all store numbers. So this way, our users the client's users were able to figure out which stores generated a maximum amount of traffic, which stores are underperforming, which store devices are running smoothly, which stores network devices are not, where there is heavier customer traffic. The more the customer traffic in a specific store, the more the customer behavior they were able to extract out of it. And this is something of a traffic side at the store level, that which store has the maximum traffic. I mean, in the sense that even if a customer, it is possible that some stores may have a small amount of customer going in, but they may be spending maximum more time in surfing the network, things like that. So this statistics was capturing the network traffic behavior per store. Some of the stores have heavy traffic, some of them have smaller amounts of traffic, things like that. And we just showed a couple of slides here, but there were slides, there were other reports generated which showed the competitors' sites. So for this particular retail client for which this project was developed, they noticed that it is obvious if you are a retail client, your major competitor is going to be Amazon.com. And that was no surprise to them. So they did find that most of the time when customers are going to the store, when they look at the graph, they saw Amazon had the biggest hit amongst the competitors. Of course, things like eBay, Walmart also got a lot of hit. But it was no surprise that anybody who goes to retail store do a shopping, if they want to buy a product, Amazon has become the de facto standard for doing the price comparison. So that customer behavior that the end users were able to capture gave them a real insight. Now they knew what the customers were trying to do, and this was a real good use case for them, and Hadoop helped in a big way. The same data point was given to a database team, which could not do anything out of it, and Hadoop and its ecosystem with an open source environment was able to extract good insights out of it, so that the customer was able to figure out what's going on, and they were trying to do a targeted marketing to increase the sales. So the key takeaway is that, do you have a data that you don't know what to do with? That's the key. A lot of times that any corporations now with unstructured data, massive amounts of data is getting generated. So the key takeaway is you want to know what to do with it. Data hub, single source of truth. We all know that enterprise data hub, the data warehouse concept has been there forever. People have used Teradata, people have used Oracle, things like that. But we recommend in MetaScale using Hadoop as an enterprise data hub. Data governance is critical. This is nothing unique to Hadoop. When you're dealing with massive amounts of corporate data, you do want to have a governance structure around it, whether it's Hadoop or something else. This is extremely important. Hadoop really can answer questions that was not able to answer before. This use case we just discussed was a perfect example of that, that the data was available, the traditional environment could not figure out what to do with it. Hadoop allows you to bring BI in-house for cost savings. I mean, in this particular case, DataMeer was used, but there are open source BI tools that could have been used, and no cost would have been there from the software perspective.
All right, we've got some good questions coming in, and still time to ask any questions that you may have. We'll just go right with the first question. It's a pretty basic one. What is your data size? What was the data size that you're working with?
The data size varied. I mean, it was anywhere from 5 to 10 gig per day. On a daily basis for the retail customer, the size was a lot more during the peak season like Thanksgiving and Christmas sales or any other sales season. But on a traditional regular day, it was around 5 gig, but it increased based on the specific sales.
Okay. This is a good one. Are you doing any real-time targeted marketing to the end customers with this framework?
That's where the ultimate goal is. Currently, for this particular client, the managed service provider was capturing the data once a day. I mean, but this client eventually wants to go in that direction. They don't want one time a day data. They want us to provide solutions so that the managed service provider will send real-time data, which will be captured, and this whole framework will run in a real-time environment. That's where they want us to go.
So are you ready to go in that direction if they ask?
Absolutely. The framework is in place. We are running it once a day based on the data that is coming in. All we have to do is switch on our cron job to run as and when the file comes in. So it will run on a real-time basis.
Okay. So is this a one-size-fits-all package solution that is able to support a variety of customers?
The framework is extremely generic that we developed. Most of the framework are reusable, but there may be some specific code changes for a specific customer needs. But most of the package that we have developed is extremely generic that it is completely reusable. So specific code will be required for specific customer needs.
Okay. Here's another question about the data that you're capturing. If you're capturing customer data, aren't you concerned about customer privacy issues?
Yes, that is a concern for anybody. But in this particular case, we were not getting a PII data, personal identifiable information data. There was no personal data for the customer that was getting captured. What was getting captured was where the customer was going. So there was no knowledge of who this particular customer was. All we knew was somebody is using an iPhone and going to some website, somebody is using a Samsung going to a website without knowing who that person is. So the customer privacy is really concerned, but in this case it was not.
Okay, here's another question. Is Hadoop an actual data warehouse or simply a storage location for data analysis?
It is both. You want to keep Hadoop as your enterprise data hub, okay? And it's just not a storage. It is more than a storage. You want to keep Hadoop as a data warehouse where you store the data and then you do real-time analytics on the data, both batch and real-time analytics on the data.
Is the storage format relational?
The storage format is not relational. Hadoop is primarily a file-based system that you can store any kind of file format. That's the beauty of it. You can store any format. It's not a structured environment, unlike a traditional data warehouse where you want everything around a structure. So you can capture any kind of data, whether it is structured, unstructured, store it in Hadoop, and do your own analytics on it.
All right, we have another one here, and you've kind of already covered it, but let's reiterate it. What were the specific challenges that the traditional RDBMS could not be used?
The main challenge was the traditional RDBMS is more structured oriented. Of course, like Oracle has something called blobs where you can put some unstructured data around it, but the processing takes a lot of time. Hadoop by nature is created for both structured and unstructured environments, so that's a major challenge. I will answer this question.
All right, so going back to the privacy issue, how do you handle data obfuscation if you need to analyze PII data?
That's a good question. So there are multiple ways to do it. One is that you want to build your Hadoop infrastructure in such a way that only limited people have access to the infrastructure. So the way we recommend is that if a client has a 1,000-node Hadoop cluster, most of the people would not have access to any of those nodes except a few access nodes. And when there is PII data involved in it, we do recommend using encryption on the data. That way, the data is encrypted, and only specific users are allowed to access the data. And because it traditionally runs in a Linux-based POSIX environment, you can use a POSIX security mechanism that we can put a file-based security around it so your data is protected.
Okay, here's another one. Is data lake and data hub, are they synonyms or?
It's just a different terminology. You can call it a data hub, you can call it a data lake. I mean, the terminology is similar. I mean, it is semantics of how you want to interpret it, but the concept is same.
Okay, we have a couple more here. Just hold on a second. Okay, can Hadoop replace what we traditionally think of as ODS?
It really depends on your use case. If the use case fits Hadoop, yes, the answer is yes. But if the use case does not fit Hadoop, then it cannot. It's for any. So if you want to drive a Porsche, definitely you want to go for an RDBMS because Hadoop is most of a batch-oriented environment with massive data processing. But if you want an express fast train instead of a slow-moving train, then yes, Hadoop does a great job. So it all depends on the use cases. So good use cases, it's a great tool to use, but it's not a fast Porsche that you can drive around. So it's all use case based.
Okay, and with that, we'll wrap it up for the day. We had a good discussion about network data and using Hadoop to be able to gain business analytics from that, and got a good overview of the Hadoop ecosystem of tools and how they're integrated into an enterprise environment. If you have any questions about this particular use case, or if you're struggling to find your own use case and you need some help, we encourage you to reach out to us either by our toll-free number 1-800-234-8769 or email us contact@metascale.com. Additionally, if you're looking for a little deeper dive into the Hadoop ecosystem of tools, we do offer training courses nationwide. We encourage you to go to metascale.com and visit our training section there for courses near you. With that, I thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Sada.
Thank you all for joining.
All right, have a great day.